She humiliated me and left me for a charismatic scammer. 48 hours later, she realized the family ranch she wanted to sell was never, ever hers. The scent of black walnut is the smell of honesty. It's a rich, earthy perfume with a hint of chocolate, and it never lies. You can't rush it. You can't force it. You have to read the grain, understand its tensions, and respect its history before you can even think about making the first cut. My grandfather taught me that in this very workshop, his calloused hand guiding mine over a rough sawn plank. "Everything good takes time, Caleb," he'd say, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "The wood tells you what it wants to be. You just have to be quiet enough to listen." Right now, I was listening. I was planing the final surface of a dining room table, a massive single slab of walnut that had been curing in my barn for 3 years. The blade whispered across the wood, peeling away a ribbon of timber so thin it was almost transparent. Underneath, the grain shimmered, a complex map of dark rivers and pale eddies. It was for a client downtown, a tech millionaire who, to his credit, understood the value of something made by hand. This table would outlive him. It would outlive his children. It was solid. It was real. Lately, real things felt like they were in short supply. I glanced out the workshop window, across the stretch of green lawn to the house. Our house. The 1920s farmhouse my grandparents had bought and which I had slowly, painstakingly restored over the past decade. It was supposed to be our forever home. But lately, a strange silence had taken root inside its walls, a quiet so different from the peaceful solitude of my workshop. It was a tense, brittle silence, filled with the things we weren't saying. I saw Jenna pacing on the back porch, her phone pressed to her ear. Her posture was ramrod straight, animated. Even from 50 yards away, I could feel the energy coming off her, a nervous, thrumming frequency that didn't belong here among the old oaks and the quiet fields. She was talking to someone from her new seminars, probably. For the last 6 months, it was all she talked about. Julian Vance, the mindset guru. Julian, who taught you how to monetize your authenticity. Julian, who filled her head with talk of upgrades, of leveling up, of escaping a life of mediocrity. Our 10-year wedding anniversary was Saturday. I planned a party, invited our closest friends and my brother David. I'd hoped it would be an anchor, a way to pull us back to shore. I'd hoped it would remind her of the solid, real life we'd built plank by plank. Looking at her now, a stranger silhouetted against the familiar lines of my family home, I felt a cold knot tighten in my gut. I had a feeling I wasn't celebrating an anniversary. I was preparing for an earthquake. The party felt wrong from the start. The air in our backyard was thick with the scent of grilled steaks and fresh-cut grass, but it couldn't cover the tension. David, my older brother, stood next to me by the grill, a beer in his hand and a frown line etched between his brows. He'd been watching Jenna all evening. "She hasn't looked at you once, Cal," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "She's performing. Who's she trying to impress?" He was right. Jenna was gliding through the small crowd of our friends, her laughter a little too loud, her smile a little too bright. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen, a sleek, white number that looked like it cost more than my truck payment. She looked like a visitor here, a tourist in her own life. After we finished eating, as the sun began to dip below the tree line and paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, I tapped a knife against my glass. If I could have everyone's attention for a second, I started, my voice feeling unsteady. "I just want to thank you all for coming to celebrate 10 years with me and Jenna. It means the world to me." I looked at her, trying to catch her eye, trying to send a silent message across the 10 feet of lawn that separated us. "Remember this. Remember us." She finally met my gaze, but there was no warmth in it. She gave me a small, tight smile, then stood up, raising her own glass. "Actually, I'd like to say something too." A hush fell over the party. My brother shifted his weight, sensing something was off. "I want to thank Caleb," Jenna began, her voice clear and strong. "I want to thank him for these 10 years. They taught me so much. They taught me what I don't want." A collective, sharp intake of breath. My heart stopped. This wasn't happening. They taught me that a comfortable life isn't the same as a fulfilled one, she continued, her eyes scanning the stunned faces of our friends. And recently, I met someone who showed me what it means to live an extraordinary life. My soulmate, Julian. The name hung in the air, ugly and obscene. So, I'm honoring my truth. My journey with Caleb has reached its end. I'm starting a new, authentic life. Effective immediately. She placed her glass down on the table with a soft click. The sound echoed in the dead silence. Without another glance at me, she walked across the lawn, down the gravel driveway where a sleek, black BMW I'd never seen before was waiting, its engine purring. The door opened, and she got in. As she passed me, she leaned in close enough to whisper, her breath warm against my skin. "I'm sorry, Caleb, but you can't give me the world." "He can." And then she was gone, leaving me standing there, a ghost at my own anniversary party. The engine of the BMW faded, leaving a silence that was heavier than any sound. Our friend stood frozen, a tableau of shock and pity. My brother, David, was by my side in an instant, his hand a solid weight on my shoulder. "I'm gonna kill him," David growled, his knuckles white where he gripped his beer bottle. "And her." "No," I said, the word feeling like dust in my mouth. "Just make them leave. Please." He didn't argue. He and his wife quietly began ushering people out, murmuring excuses, their faces grim. Within 15 minutes, the yard was empty except for me and David. The party decorations, the half-eaten food, the string lights I'd so carefully hung now looked like relics from a forgotten civilization. David tried to get me to talk, to rage, to do anything. I couldn't. I was hollowed out, a vessel scoured clean by humiliation. He eventually gave up, cleaned up the worst of the mess, and clapped me on the back before he left. "Call me tomorrow. First thing. We'll figure this out." I nodded, unable to form words. The house was a tomb. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture we'd picked out, felt like a mockery. I couldn't breathe in there. I walked out to the workshop, the familiar scent of sawdust and machine oil a small comfort. The big walnut table stood in the center of the room, solid and serene. My eyes landed on my workbench. Sitting there, under a soft cloth, was the anniversary gift I'd been making for her. A small jewelry box, crafted from a single piece of bird's eye maple, its grain a constellation of tiny, swirling stars. I'd spent 50 hours on it, cutting the dovetail joints by hand, sanding it until it felt like silk. I lifted the cloth. The box was perfect, a testament to a decade of love and effort, a monument to a lie, a wave of something, not anger, but a profound, bottomless grief crashed over me. I didn't smash the box. I didn't throw a tool. That would have been too easy, too loud. Instead, I sank to the floor, my back against the solid iron base of my grandfather's old table saw. I pulled my knees to my chest, and, in the dusty silence of the only place that had ever felt truly mine, I let the emptiness consume me. I didn't weep for the woman who had just left. I wept for the 10 years I could never get back. I wept for the fool who had spent them building a beautiful house on a foundation of sand. Sometime before dawn, the grief burned itself out, leaving behind something cold and hard. I woke up on the concrete floor, my back aching, and a single, clear thought in my mind. She hadn't just taken my future. She had tried to take my past, and I wasn't going to let her. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call her. I called Art Hayes, my father's lawyer. Art's office was a time capsule. The chairs were worn leather. The air smelled of old books and strong coffee, and the walls were covered in framed photos of him with my dad on fishing trips. Art had handled my grandparents' will and my father's estate. He was more than a lawyer. He was a fixture of my family's history. "Caleb," he said, his expression grim as he shut the door to his office. David called me. He told me the broad strokes. "I'm sorry, son. Truly." I just nodded, sinking into one of the leather chairs. "I need to know where I stand, Art. With the house. That's the first thing we protect," he agreed, turning to his computer. "She'll come for half the property. In this state, it's community property, so she's entitled to it. We need to brace for a fight." I watched him type, his fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. I gave him Jenna's full name, her date of birth. He pulled up county records, his brow furrowed in concentration. For a few minutes, the only sound was the clicking of keys. Then he stopped. He leaned closer to the screen. "Well, I'll be a son of a gun," he muttered. "What is it?" I asked, my stomach twisting. He turned the monitor towards me. On the screen was the official property deed for my 10-acre lot and the house. And in the section marked owner, there was only one name: Caleb Michael Wallace. Jenna's name was nowhere. Not as a co-owner, not on the mortgage, not anywhere. "I don't understand," I said, my voice hoarse. "We bought it. Well, it was inherited, but we refinanced to do the big renovation." She handled all the paperwork. She was a legal assistant then. She said it would be easier. "Oh, it was easier, all right," Art said, a grim smile touching his lips. He dug deeper, pulling up more documents. She made sure her name was kept off every binding document. "The only signature here is yours." He looked at me over the top of his glasses. "The question is why?" He kept digging. What he found next made the blood run cold in my veins. He uncovered a series of small, regular transfers from our joint checking account, the account my income went into, to a personal savings account under her name. $200 here, $400 there, never enough to trigger an alarm. Over 3 years, it totaled $50,172. I felt the air leave my lungs. "My mother's inheritance," I whispered. I told Jenna I was saving that exact amount to build a new, larger workshop. She knew what that money was for. But Art wasn't done. He found an LLC registered under Jenna's maiden name. An LLC that had purchased a small condo in a town 50 miles away 2 years ago. I stared at the screen, at the black and white proof of a multi-year deception. She hadn't just decided to leave. She had been building an escape ramp for years, using my money, my trust, and my family's legacy as her raw materials. "Art," I said, remembering a detail that suddenly seemed critical. "When she set up the deed, she told me it was to protect the house. She said she had some old credit card debt from before we were married, and that keeping her name off the deed was the best way to protect my family's legacy from her creditors." Art sat back in his chair and let out a long, slow whistle. "She played you like a fiddle, son. She used your own history as a shield for her betrayal. And in the end, she outsmarted herself. For the next 47 hours, there was only silence. I didn't call her. She didn't call me. I spent the time walking the property line of the ranch, my dog Tucker glued to my side. With every step, I felt the ground under my feet, a solid reality that contrasted with the phantom life I'd been living. I was a fool, but I was a fool standing on my own land. The thought was a small, hard comfort. Then, at 10:15 on Sunday morning, precisely 48 hours after she'd walked out of the party, my phone exploded. It started with a text. "We need to talk about listing the house immediately." I ignored it, just as Art had instructed. Radio silence, Caleb. Let her make the first move. Let her reveal her hand. A minute later, my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was all business, the crisp, professional tone she used with real estate clients. "Caleb, it's Jenna. I've spoken with a broker. The market in our area is peaking, and we need to move quickly before the fall slowdown. Call me back so we can discuss the next steps." I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Art. His texted response was immediate. "Perfect. Keep it up." Over the next few hours, the dam broke. A flood of calls, texts, and voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. The professional tone evaporated, replaced by irritation, then anger. Voicemail number 2. "Are you seriously ignoring my calls? This is a time-sensitive financial matter, Caleb. We need to be adults about this." Voicemail number 4. "This is childish. I know you're hurt, but you can't just bury your head in the sand. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity at stake." By evening, the desperation was palpable. Her voice was strained, cracking at the edges. Voicemail number 7. "Caleb, please, just pick up the phone. Julian has a major investment opportunity, a sure thing, but he needs capital. My portion from the sale is critical. This is for my future. For our future, in a way. Don't be selfish. Don't you see I need this?" The raw, grasping entitlement in her voice was staggering. She wasn't asking for a fair division of assets. She was demanding I liquidate my home, my history, to fund her new life with her soulmate. She saw my grandparents' legacy not as a home, but as an ATM. I sat on the back porch, Tucker's head resting on my knee, and listened to her frantic messages echo in the quiet evening air. The woman on the phone was a stranger, a ravenous ghost wearing my wife's voice. And for the first time since the party, I didn't feel grief. I felt a cold, quiet power. She was operating in a world of illusion. I was standing on solid ground, and she was just beginning to realize the difference. Later that night, an unknown number flashed on my phone. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Caleb, it's Bill Peterson, Jenna's father." My heart sank. Bill and I'd always gotten along. He was a retired mechanical engineer, a man who, like me, understood the world through his hands. We'd spent countless hours in his garage, restoring his prized '67 Chevy pickup, talking about engines and life while Jenna and her mother were off shopping. "Mr. Peterson," I said, my voice steady. "Good to hear from you." I wish I could say the same, he sighed, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "Listen, Caleb, Jenna is here, and she's having a complete meltdown. She's saying you've locked her out, that you won't discuss the settlement, that you're being vindictive. What in the hell is going on?" I took a deep breath. "Bill, what did she tell you about how she left?" She said you two had been having problems for months and mutually decided to separate. That you got aggressive when she brought up selling the house. The lie was so bald-faced, so manipulative, it almost made me laugh. "Bill, none of that is true. Do you want to know what really happened?" There was silence on the other end, so I told him everything. The anniversary party I'd thrown to try and save us. The public announcement in front of our friends. The Soulmate in the BMW. The carefully worded note she'd left on the kitchen island that I hadn't even mentioned before. The discovery that my family home was, by her own design, not hers. The $50,000 of my mother's inheritance she'd siphoned out of our account. As I spoke, I could feel the anger draining out of Bill's silence, replaced by a heavy, profound disappointment. When I finished, he didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was thick with shame. "That girl, she's just like her mother. Always looking for the shortcut. Always thinking the grass is greener somewhere else." He exhaled heavily. "She showed up here yesterday with this Julian character. He wore more jewelry than my wife and a smile as fake as a $3 bill. My gut told me he was a phony the second I saw him. He kept asking Jenna when the ranch money was coming through." He paused. "Caleb, I am so sorry. We didn't raise her to be like this." "I know you didn't, Bill. So, what are you going to do?" he asked. "I'm not selling the ranch," I said, my voice hard as iron. "This place is my home. It was my grandparents' home. I'm not letting it go." "Good," he said, a note of relief in his voice. "Don't you dare. Between you and me, son, you got the better end of this deal." 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of blessed silence from Jenna. I knew from Art that she had finally hired a lawyer who had undoubtedly run the same property search Art had. The frantic calls had stopped, replaced by an ominous quiet. I knew a storm was coming. I just didn't know when it would hit. It hit on a Tuesday afternoon. I was out in the south pasture, replacing a section of fence that a fallen oak had crushed. It was hard, satisfying work under a hot sun. I was driving a new post into the ground when I heard the sound of a car coming up my driveway way too fast, spitting gravel. It was her Mercedes SUV. She slammed it to a halt and stormed across the field toward me, stumbling slightly in boots that were made for a fashion magazine, not a pasture. She was dressed to the nines, designer jeans, a silk blouse, and chunky gold jewelry that glinted in the sun. She was playing a part, the sophisticated city woman who had outgrown her country bumpkin husband. "We need to talk," she demanded, stopping a few feet away. No hello, no preamble. I ignored her. I picked up my sledgehammer and swung, driving the post another 6 inches into the hard Texas soil. The impact shuddered up my arms. "Did you hear me, Caleb? We need to discuss selling this place. My lawyer says." "I heard you," I said, not looking up. I positioned the next post. "Well, we have to list it immediately. We're losing money every day we wait." I finally stopped. I leaned the sledgehammer against the fence and looked at her. Really looked at her. The expensive clothes and the perfect makeup couldn't hide the frantic, hunted look in her eyes. "There's nothing to discuss," I said calmly. "It's not for sale." Her perfectly painted face twisted in confusion. "What do you mean it's not for sale?" "It's a marital asset. We have to divide our assets." I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch. I let her stand there in the heat, in her ridiculous boots, the wheels in her head spinning furiously. "Caleb, stop being difficult," she snapped, her voice rising. "We both know we have to sell and split the money. This is how divorce works." "You should probably check the county records, Jenna," I said, my voice flat. "The ones you filed yourself." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? The ranch isn't in your name. It never was." The sequence of emotions that washed over her face was almost comical. Disbelief, confusion, and then a slow, dawning horror as the truth finally broke through her wall of denial. That's not possible," she stammered. "We did the paperwork together." "Yep, you handled it all. You told me it was to protect my family's legacy from your old debts." A noble gesture. The sarcasm in my voice was thick enough to cut. "Guess you outplayed yourself." Her face went white. The mask of the sophisticated woman shattered, revealing the desperate, cornered girl underneath. But my money went into this place too. The renovations." I finally let the sledgehammer drop. I took a step closer, and for the first time, she flinched. "Your money?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "You mean my mother's $50,000 inheritance that you drained from our joint account? That money? Or are you talking about your salary that went into your secret personal account, while my income paid for every single bill in this house for 10 years? I leaned in. "Tell me, Jenna, which money are we talking about?" She stared at me, speechless, busted. She knew that I knew everything. After she stormed off that day, spitting threats about lawyers and lawsuits, the first thing I did was call a locksmith. New locks on every door, new codes on the garage and gate. The house was no longer a shared space. It was a fortress. It was mine. The feeling was so profound, so liberating, that it sparked something in me. For the first time in years, I looked around the house and saw it not as a museum of our failed marriage, but as a blank canvas. Her influence was everywhere, a layer of sterile, soulless modern farmhouse chic that she'd curated from Pinterest. The uncomfortable gray couch that looked good but felt like sitting on a block of concrete. The white wall she'd insisted on because they made the space look bigger and brighter, but which always felt cold and clinical to me. The home office she had claimed, filled with inspirational quotes in cursive script and not a single speck of dust. I started in the living room. The gray couch was the first to go. I listed it for free on Facebook Marketplace, and a grateful college kid hauled it away within an hour. In its place, I bought a huge, overstuffed leather sofa that smelled like heaven and practically begged you to fall asleep on it. I painted the main wall a deep forest green, a color Jenna had always vetoed as too dark. With a new color on the wall, the stone fireplace my grandfather built suddenly came alive, its warmth no longer washed out by a sea of white. Next, I tackled her office. I cleared out the posters and the perfectly organized desk accessories. I hauled in my workbench's smaller cousin, installed better lighting, and turned the room into a dedicated space for my finer, more detailed woodwork, the kind of inlay and carving work that required focus and clean air. It was no longer a room for dreaming about a fake life. It was a room for creating real things. The most symbolic change happened in my bedroom. Jenna had always banished Tucker from the room, complaining about the shedding. That night, after changing the locks, I patted the space on the bed next to me. Tucker, my loyal Australian shepherd who had been my shadow through all of this, looked at me, then at the bed, as if asking for permission. He hesitantly hopped up, circled 3 times, and collapsed with a contented sigh, resting his head on the pillow next to mine. I was rebuilding my life, one small, deliberate act at a time. I was sanding away the veneer she had applied and rediscovering the true grain underneath. During this time, I took on a new commission, a large library shelving system for a well-known architect named Eliza. She respected my craft, spoke my language of joinery and wood types. And in our conversations, I found myself remembering the pride I had in my work, a pride that had been slowly eroded by Jenna's subtle dismissiveness. And as I was rebuilding, I was also fortifying my defenses. On Art's advice, I packaged up the evidence of Jenna's financial discrepancies. The loan application for her secret condo, where she'd inflated her income to get the loan, compared with our joint tax returns. I sent it all in an anonymous tip to the IRS. Art's words echoed in my head. Sometimes, Caleb, you don't have to burn their house down. You just have to give them the matches and let them do it themselves. A month later, I ran into Chloe, Jenna's best friend and chief cheerleader, at the local hardware store. She was in the paint aisle, staring blankly at a wall of color swatches, her own Instagram-perfect facade looking a little cracked at the seams. She spotted me, and her face went through a quick series of expressions: surprise, then discomfort, then a mask of pity that was deeply insulting. "Caleb," she said, as if she were speaking to a recent widow. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing just fine, Chloe. Thanks for asking," I said, my tone breezy and cheerful. I threw a bag of wood screws into my cart. "Business is good. Life is quiet. Can't complain." Her pity shifted to confusion. This wasn't the reaction she was expecting. She was expecting me to be a wreck, a broken man pining for a friend. "Oh, well, that's good to hear," she said. "Jenna is doing amazing. Just thriving. She's really living her best life now." The lie was so thin, so desperate, that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I leaned against my cart and gave her a slow, friendly smile. "That's great to hear. I'm happy for her. Say, how's her new guy, Julian, doing?" I heard his Big River Heights development ran into some trouble. Chloe's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I wouldn't know about that." "Really?" I feigned surprise. "Huh. I just figured since you're all in his circle, you'd have heard." A buddy of mine in the construction business, my brother, David, said contractors are filing liens for unpaid work. Banks are calling in loans. Messy stuff. Sounds like a real house of cards. I watched the color drain from her face. Chloe was an enabler, but she was also a survivor. She wouldn't want to be anywhere near a sinking ship. "Anyway," I said, pushing my cart forward, "you tell Jenna I said hi, and that I wish her the best." I paused and looked back at her, letting my friendly smile drop just a little, replaced by something colder. "And I hope she has a good accountant. I hear the IRS can be a real pain to deal with." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked away, whistling softly. I knew, with absolute certainty, that the content of that conversation would get back to Jenna within the hour. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't made a threat. I had simply planted a seed of truth in the barren soil of their fantasy, and now I could just wait and watch it grow. I knew from Bill that Julian had already dropped Jenna the moment he confirmed the ranch money wasn't coming. My little chat with Chloe was just twisting the knife she had already stabbed in her own back. Months crawled by. The divorce was finalized. As expected, her claim on the ranch was dismissed. Her demand for spousal support was laughed out of the room when Art presented proof of her secret account and undeclared income. In the end, I let her keep the SUV and the furniture she'd picked out. It was a small price to pay for a clean break. I wanted her out of my life, a ghost exorcised from my home. I didn't see her again until the week before Christmas. I was at the grocery store, navigating the holiday crowds, when a shopping cart banged into mine at the end of the aisle. "Oh, sorry," a voice started then trailed off. I looked up. It was Jenna. If I hadn't known it was her, I might not have recognized her. The platinum blonde hair was gone, replaced by her natural brown, grown out in a way that suggested neglect, not style. She wore no makeup, and there were dark circles under her eyes. The designer clothes had been replaced by a simple sweatshirt and jeans. She looked diminished, a pale copy of the vibrant, defiant woman who had stormed across my pasture. An awkward silence hung between us. "Caleb," she finally whispered. "Jenna." I nodded, my voice neutral. Can we talk? Just for a minute?" she asked, her eyes pleading. "Please." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We paid for our groceries and walked out to the parking lot, ending up sitting in the cab of my old Ford pickup truck, the engine off, the winter air fogging up the windows. She didn't speak for a long time, just fidgeted with the strap of her purse. I made some bad decisions, she finally admitted, her voice shaking. I couldn't help myself. A single, dry laugh escaped me. No kidding. That broke her. The tears she'd been holding back began to fall, silent at first, then turning into ragged sobs that shook her whole body. She told me everything, the words tumbling out in a messy, desperate confession. How Julian had convinced her to invest the last of her secret savings, the money she'd gotten from selling the jewelry I'd bought her over the years, into his final, failing project. How he disappeared the day it went bankrupt. How the condo she bought had been foreclosed on by the bank. How the IRS audit was a nightmare, and she was facing a mountain of back taxes and penalties she could never hope to pay. I don't know what to do, Caleb, she cried, mascara smudging down her cheeks. I'm drowning. My parents will barely speak to me. Chloe won't even answer my calls. I have nowhere to go. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, terrifying hope. Could I maybe stay in the guest room? Just for a little while? Just until I get back on my feet? The question hung in the cold air of the truck's cab. She wanted to come back. Not to the marriage, not to me, but to the safety net. She wanted to seek refuge in the very home she had tried to burn down. The audacity was breathtaking. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, my hands on the steering wheel, and looked out at the bustling parking lot. I thought about the hollowed-out feeling after the party, the quiet grief in my workshop, the cold knot of betrayal that had lived in my stomach for months. So let me get this straight, I said finally, my voice devoid of any emotion. You publicly humiliate me. You try to steal half of my family's property to fund a fantasy with a con artist. And now that your world has collapsed, you want my help? I was desperate, she protested weakly. I made a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Jenna. It was a plan. A long one. It just didn't work out the way you thought it would. I reached into the glove compartment. I had started keeping a folder in my truck on art's advice. A just-in-case folder. I pulled it out and handed it to her. Her brow furrowed in confusion as she opened it. Inside were copies of everything. The bank statements showing the systematic transfers. The loan application with her inflated income next to the tax return with her real one. A printout of the property deed with my name, and only my name, on it. Her face went completely white as she flipped through the pages. She looked up at me, a new kind of horror in her eyes. The horror of realization. It was you, she whispered. The IRS, you were the one who told them. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just held her gaze. What do you want, Caleb? She asked, her voice defeated. What will it take to make this go away? And that's when I knew I had finally won. Not when the divorce was final, not when I kept the house, but in this moment. The moment she realized I held all the cards, I didn't want to play them. I don't want anything, Jenna, I said, and the honesty of it surprised even me. That's the beauty of it. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's moving on. It's realizing I'm better off without you. I took the folder from her trembling hands and put it back in the glove compartment. Keep the SUV. I don't care. But our business is finished. If you ever contact me again, if you ever come near me or this ranch again, a second copy of this folder goes to the State Real Estate Licensing Board and to the DA's office. Do you understand me? She could only nod, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she choked out. Back then, in the beginning, I really did love you. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. But you love the idea of something better even more. I started the truck, the engine rumbling to life. It's a shame. Turns out boring and stable beats exciting and broke every single time. And it only cost you everything to figure that out. I didn't ask her to get out. She just did, scrambling out of the truck and scurrying away through the parking lot, a ghost disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, and I didn't feel anger or pity or even satisfaction. I just felt nothing. It was finally over. Spring arrived, turning the pastures a vibrant, impossible green. The divorce was a memory. The ranch was thriving. I'd taken on 2 more horses to board, and my custom furniture business had a 6-month waiting list. The house felt like a home again, filled with the smell of sawdust, leather, and dog. It was a good life. It wasn't the life I had planned, but maybe that was the point. The best-laid plans often ignore the natural grain of things. One evening, Bill Peterson stopped by. He didn't call first, just pulled his old Chevy up the driveway. We'd made it a semi-regular thing, working on his truck, drinking a beer, and talking about anything but his daughter. "She's moved to another state," he said, breaking our unspoken rule as we were cleaning grease off our hands. "Got a job as a waitress. She's paying her back taxes a little every month. Says she's humbled." He looked at me, his eyes full of the father's weary pain. "Never thought I'd see the day." "People change when they have to," I said simply. After he left, I sat on the porch swing my grandfather had built, watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance over the fields. I thought about Jenna, not with anger, but with a distant, detached sadness. I didn't know if I'd ever truly forgive her, but I realized it didn't matter. Forgiveness was a transaction between two people. Peace was something you found on your own. Winning hadn't felt like a victory lap. It had felt like signing a death certificate for a part of my life I had once cherished. But from that death, something new had been given the space to grow. My relationship with my brother was stronger than ever. My work gave me a sense of purpose that went deeper than just a paycheck. I had found a quiet rhythm to my days, a life built not on grand promises, but on small, solid truths. I'd once thought happiness was building a life with someone. I now understood it was about building a life that was true. True to yourself, true to your history, true to the grain of your own soul. Tucker trotted onto the porch and rested his heavy head on my lap. I scratched behind his ears, listening to the symphony of crickets and frogs that filled the night. My world was not the big, extraordinary world Jenna had chased. It was a small, 10-acre world of wood and steel and dirt and loyalty. And it was more than enough. It was everything.